The day I signed the divorce papers, I found a pregnancy test in the trash can. 2 lines. Bright red. Rick's secretary called, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Madam, Rick is accompanying Monica to her prenatal checkup today. Just sign the documents and leave them on the table." In the background noise of the phone call, I heard Rick's impatient voice, "What's the rush? It's just a title, just give it to her." I looked down at the small plastic stick in the trash can. What a coincidence. His new love is expecting a new life. His ex-girlfriend has just discovered she's pregnant. He'll never know. I slammed the signed divorce papers on the table, picked up the pregnancy test, wrapped it in a tissue, and stuffed it into the only empty space in my bag. Dragging my 5-year-old suitcase, I walked out of this cold, luxurious villa. The door closed behind me without a sound. Like my 5-year marriage, which ended without a trace. My name is Rachel. Rick married me because he wanted something simple and easy. He needed a quiet, unassuming wife to keep in his luxurious cage and appease his image-conscious father. I did just that. 5 years. Playing the role of a refined, silent, soulless face. Until his beloved Monica divorced and returned home. As a mere extra, I should wisely get out of there. He offered very generous compensation, a luxury apartment in the city center, and more money than I could ever spend in my lifetime. Enough to buy out the 5 years of my youth that I'd been kept in captivity. I didn't take it. I only took a few old clothes that belonged to me, and a well-worn French dessert cookbook. And the unexpected little one in my belly. I rented a small, old, run-down apartment of about 40 square meters. It was far from the city center, but there was a small storefront for rent downstairs. The price was so cheap it was practically free. I bought it with my meager savings and took out a loan. Rick probably thought I'd take his money and quietly wither away somewhere, or, as his secretary hinted, sensibly disappear. Unfortunately, he forgot that Rachel, who married him, was a flower that had withered in a greenhouse. But before she married him, Rachel was a wild grass that could sprout even from cracks in the rocks. I studied baking in college. My biggest dream used to be to open a small shop filled with the aroma of butter and caramel. That dream was easily extinguished by Rick on my very first day as Mrs. Rick. A woman who cares about the family doesn't need to show her face in public and do this kind of servant work. His words set the tone for me for the next 5 years. Now, the cage door is open. My little shop is called Simple Taste. Simple and pure, that's the taste I want, and the life I want. The shop is pitifully small, barely big enough for 3 small tables. The oven, blender, and refrigerator are crammed together, making it difficult to even turn around. Painting the walls, installing lights, decorating, I did it all myself, even though my belly wasn't very noticeable yet. When my back was about to break from exhaustion, I would touch my belly and say, "Son, pull yourself together, Mom will treat you to the best of everything." On opening day, there was no ceremony. I baked a batch of the most basic baguettes and displayed them in the window. The aroma stubbornly wafted out, attracting a few students leaving school and elderly people taking a stroll. "Boss, how much are these breads?" "Baguettes are 8 yuan, but today is our opening day, buy one get one free." I answered with a smile, wearing my faded old apron. Sunlight streamed through the clean glass, illuminating the freshly baked bread, making it glow golden. The air was filled with the warm aroma of wheat and butter. This was a sense of security I had never felt in my 5 years of marriage. Rick found me 3 months later. My belly was already showing, and I could barely cover it with a loose apron. It was the busiest time of the afternoon, and the shop was packed with office workers from nearby buildings buying afternoon tea and snacks. "An iced Americano and a croissant, please hurry." "Boss, is my tiramisu ready?" "Do you still have matcha milfai?" "Cut me a big piece." I was as busy as a spinning top, collecting money, packing, cutting cakes, and also taking a moment to check on the new batch of egg yolk pastries in the oven. The doorbell rang again. I didn't look up. "Welcome. Please see what you need. Please wait a moment while I order." No one spoke at the door. A familiar, cool cedarwood scent overpowered the sweet aroma of baking in the shop. My heart skipped a beat, and I looked up. Rick stood in the doorway. His perfectly tailored dark gray bespoke suit clashed starkly with the small shop, crammed with cheap tables and chairs and reeking of flour. His face was so dark it seemed to drip water. His gaze, like a searchlight, was fixed intently on my stomach. The shop fell silent instantly. All eyes were on him, then glanced curiously at me. "Rachel," he said, his voice like it had been pulled from an icebox, "you'd better give me an explanation." I put down the cake knife and wiped my hands on my apron. "Rick, line up to buy bread. If you're not buying, please move aside and don't block the customers behind you." The tone was as calm as if asking about the weather. Rick's temples throbbed. He probably never dreamed that his ex-wife, who used to be as docile as a cat in his presence, would speak to him in such a tone. "You're pregnant?" He took a step closer, ignoring the probing gazes around them, his voice laced with barely suppressed rage. "Mine?" I forced a smile, picked up a freshly baked almond crisp, and took a bite. So crisp, so delicious. "Rick, we're divorced," I said slowly, swallowing. "What does my stomach have to do with you?" His eyes looked like he wanted to devour me whole. "Rachel, do you know what you're doing? Pregnant with my child, Rick's, in a place like this." He glanced disgustedly at the narrow, crowded shop, "selling this worthless stuff? It's shameful." Smack. I slammed the half-eaten almond crisp I was holding onto the counter. Shards flew everywhere. "Rick," I looked up, meeting his angry eyes without fear for the first time. "First and foremost, whether this child is yours or not is up to me. Second," I pointed to the door, "this is my shop, I make my living here, it's clean and there's nothing shameful about it. Third," I took a deep breath and forced a cold smile, "a good dog doesn't block the way, please get lost." A deathly silence fell. The customers in the shop held their breath, their eyes wide open. Rick had probably never been told to get lost to his face before. His face went from ashen to deathly pale, his fists clenched so tightly they cracked, and veins bulged on his forehead. Just when I thought he was about to lose control and smash up the shop, he suddenly turned around and kicked over the small, new product recommendation blackboard by the door. There was a loud crash. Then, radiating an aura that seemed to freeze the air, he slammed the door and left. The glass door swayed back and forth, emitting a piercing groan. I bent down, righted the small blackboard, and dusted it off. It read in chalk, "Today's special, durian milk crepe, a sweet attack." It's all right, everyone please continue." I smiled at the customers in the shop. That gentleman was in a bad mood and startled everyone. "Here's a piece of almond crisp for everyone to calm down." The frozen air in the shop instantly came alive. A buzz of discussion arose. "Wow. Boss is awesome. Who was that? His aura was terrifying. Looks familiar. Isn't that rich guy surnamed Gu? Ex-husband? TSK, they're divorced and he's still trying to get involved in his ex-wife's childbirth? He's shameless." "Exactly. Boss, you're right. This kind of scumbag deserves to be scolded." "Boss, another durian milfai, please. I'm a fan." The cashier's notification sounds echoed. I smiled and agreed, my hands quickly packing the food. No one saw that my hands, hanging limply under the counter, were trembling slightly. It wasn't fear. It was anger. And a hint of inexplicable satisfaction. Rick didn't go far. He started haunting him. Like an expensive, inescapable plaster. The next morning, I had just opened the roller shutter door when a swaggering black Cullinan was parked across the entrance, almost blocking the way. Rick got out, carrying an insulated bag with the logo of a top private chef. "Breakfast." He shoved the bag in front of me, his chin slightly raised, with a condescending arrogance. "The food here isn't clean. Don't eat here again." I walked past him and hung up the "Open for Business" sign. "Thank you, I've already eaten." It was just some leftovers from the shop, clean and filling. His face darkened, and he placed the insulated bag on a nearby unused table. Rachel, don't be ungrateful. You're carrying the Gu family's blood, there's no room for carelessness. I ignored him and turned to check the dough in the fermentation box. He followed me in. His expensive Italian handmade leather shoes looked out of place on the flour-covered floor. Come back with me. He glanced around the small shop, his brow furrowed. Is this a place fit for humans? What kind of child would be born in this environment? Without looking up, I said, Rick thinks it's dirty, the door's over there. He choked. Over the next few days, he came with different gifts. Sometimes it was imported fruit flown in by air, claiming it was good for pregnant women. Sometimes it was a thick stack of shopping carts for maternity and baby products. Sometimes it's a prenatal checkup appointment slip from a prestigious private hospital. I leave them all untouched on the small table by the door, like a pile of unclaimed trash. The regulars at the shop all know this ex-husband. Hey, Rick's here to clock in again? A middle-aged woman who regularly buys breakfast teased. Boss, what did your ex-husband bring today? Is there any for us? A few young men chimed in. Rick's face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He'd probably never received this kind of treatment in his life. Finally, one day, he cornered me, sweating profusely after seeing off a group of delivery drivers. Rachel, what exactly do you want? His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked rather disheveled. You don't want the money, you won't accept the food, what do you want me to do? I grabbed my water glass, took a big gulp, and wiped my mouth. Rick, listen carefully. First of all, this child is mine. He has nothing to do with you or the Gu family. I won't trade him for anything. Secondly, I'm doing just fine now and don't need your fake concern. Your presence only bothers me. Third, I said, staring into his suddenly constricted pupils, if you have any conscience at all, just pretend you don't know anything about this and disappear from my life completely. That would be the greatest mercy you can show me and the children. He swayed as if he'd been punched hard. His lips moved a few times, but no word came out. His eyes turned with shock, anger, and a hint of bewilderment and hurt I'd never seen before. He ultimately said nothing, turned, and walked away. His back looked slightly unsteady. After that, Rick really disappeared for a while. I thought he had finally come to his senses. His belly grew bigger and bigger, and he became increasingly unable to move around. The shop relied entirely on the support of regular customers and a young girl working part-time to keep it afloat. That afternoon, a sudden downpour began. The sky was as overcast as dusk, and large raindrops pounded against the window panes. There weren't many customers in the shop, and I sat behind the counter rubbing my swollen calves. The door was pushed open, bringing in a damp, cold wind and the earthy smell of rain. A tall figure stood in the doorway, having closed his umbrella. It wasn't Rick. It was a young, unfamiliar man, dressed simply in a beige sweater and khaki pants, his shoulders damp from the rain. He had gentle eyes, like warm jade washed by the rain. Hello, are you still open? His voice was clear and slightly apologetic. It's raining so hard, would it be convenient for you to come in and take shelter from the rain? Of course, please come in. I pointed to a seat by the window. Please sit wherever you like. Would you like something to warm up? We have hot milk and black tea. A cup of hot milk, please. He smiled, sat down by the window, and quietly watched the torrential rain outside. The shop was quiet, with only the low hum of the oven and the sound of the rain outside. I heated up the milk and brought it over. He thanked me, holding the cup with both hands, the steam illuminating his gentle features. This rain is really heavy, he said casually. Yes, it's good you came in just in time, I replied. The owner's cooking is really good, he said, pointing to the few remaining breads in the window. The aroma is so tempting. Just trying to make a living, I smiled. It was a very ordinary conversation, yet inexplicably relaxing. He sat for about half an hour, then, as the rain subsided slightly, he got up to leave. "How much is the milk?" "It's on me, a rain shelter perk." I waved my hand. He paused for a moment, then smiled, his eyes crinkling. "Thanks. My name is Simon, I work at the community hospital at the street corner. I'll patronize your business next time." He pushed open the door and stepped into the light drizzle. His back was straight yet gentle. Simon. Like the clean, refreshing sunshine after the rain. After that, he became a regular customer at the store. She always comes in the afternoon when it's not too busy, orders a drink, sometimes hot milk, sometimes an Americano, and sits quietly for a while. Occasionally, she brings a thick medical book to read. She's very quiet and never bothers me. Once we get to know each other, we'll chat for a bit. He knew I was a single mother running a small shop on my own. His eyes showed surprise, but even more so understanding and respect. There was no excessive pity, only just the right amount of care. "This height must be hard for you to bend over with your belly right now, right?" He pointed to the cabinet where I had put my pink powder. "Shall I move it to the counter for you? Pregnant women are prone to swelling if they stand for too long. There's a high stool over there. Sit down when you're tired. Don't push yourself. These desserts are a bit high in sugar, so you should limit your intake a little during late pregnancy." His advice was professional and practical, with the meticulousness and gentleness unique to doctors. Like a gentle stream, it silently soothed my tense and tiring life. Once, I bent down to reach the cream bucket at the bottom of the refrigerator when my stomach suddenly cramped, making me gasp and freeze in place. "What's wrong?" Simon immediately put down his book and rushed over to support me. "It's nothing, just a twitch." I frowned, cold sweat beading on my forehead. Without a word, he squatted down, his warm, dry fingers pressing and massaging several acupoints on my calves and lower back with moderate pressure through my clothes. "Here, and here, is it any better?" he asked, looking up intently. Surprisingly, the sharp, throbbing pain really did subside quickly. "Thank you," I said, a little embarrassed. "Don't mention it." He helped me sit on the high stool, his movements natural. "Next time you do this kind of heavy work, just call me." He turned to wash the remaining batter in the mixing bowl, his movements surprisingly practiced. "You can do these things?" I was a little surprised. I used to study abroad and worked washing dishes in the kitchen. He smiled and turned his head, the sunlight shining through the glass onto his face, warm and clean. At that moment, watching him in my little shop, sleeves rolled up, head bowed, diligently cleaning the tools, a corner of my heart was gently touched. A sense of peace and security washed over me, a feeling I had never experienced in the 5 years I'd been with Rick. Rick reappeared on a weekend afternoon. The shop was quite crowded, and Simon was there too. He helped me set up the new coffee machine, while I was busy putting the finishing touches on several birthday cakes. "This pressure valve seems to be having some problems, the extraction isn't very stable. Let me take a look," Simon said, head down, intently fiddling with the machine. I held the piping bag and carefully piped the last ring of buttercream roses around the edge of the cake. "Watch out," Simon suddenly shouted. My hand trembled, and a large dollop of bright red strawberry cream splattered onto my bulging pregnant belly, staining my light-colored maternity dress red. "Ouch!" I exclaimed. Simon immediately put down his tools, grabbed a few tissues, and rushed over. "Don't move, I'll do it." He knelt down, his movements gentle yet swift, carefully blotting away the cream stains on my stomach with the edge of a clean tissue. We were very close. His movements were focused and careful, as if handling some fragile treasure. With the professionalism and gentleness unique to doctors. "All right, thankfully it didn't seep in." He breathed a sigh of relief, looked up, and gave me a reassuring smile. "Scared you?" "It's okay," I started to say. The shop door was violently pushed open. With a loud bang, Rick burst in like a whirlwind wrapped in ice shards. His face was ashen, his eyes burning with terrifying rage as he stared intently at Simon, who was crouching in front of me, his hand still resting on my stomach. The next second, he swung his fist, sending a whooshing sound, and slammed it down hard towards Simon's face. "Rick, are you crazy?" I screamed. Simon reacted incredibly fast, dodging the punch just as it was about to hit his face. Rick's fist grazed his cheekbone and slammed heavily onto the metal control panel beside him with a dull thud. "Ugh!" he groaned, his finger bone instantly turning red. The shop erupted in chaos. Screams, the clatter of tables and chairs, and children's cries filled the air. "Rick! You're fucking crazy!" I was trembling with rage, grabbed an empty buttercream piping bag and threw it at him. "Get out! This is my shop. Get out!" Rick didn't even glance at his bleeding hand. Like a lion utterly enraged, his chest heaving, he pointed at Simon, his eyes blazing with murderous malice. "Who is he?" "Rachel. Tell me who he is? You're after this kind of trash." "Enough." Simon suddenly stood up straight and blocked my way. He was very tall, no less so than Rick, and his gentle demeanor was now replaced by a calm and cold air. "Rick, right?" Simon's voice was calm, yet carried an undeniable force. "Please leave immediately. Rachel is pregnant and shouldn't be emotionally agitated. Your outburst and even physical violence will be very detrimental to her and the fetus. Who do you think you are? Who gave you the right to lecture me?" Rick sneered, his eyes filled with insane jealousy and possessiveness. "She's carrying my child. He's your child, so you shouldn't be the one to hurt his mother." Simon retorted, his tone suddenly becoming stern. "Look at what you're doing. Frightening her, provoking her, even abusing her in front of her. Is this how a father should act?" Rick was taken aback by the questioning, his crimson eyes sweeping over my pale face, which was clutching my stomach. He opened his mouth, as if to say something. "Rick," I pushed Simon aside, who was blocking my way, and walked up to him, my voice trembling with anger but unusually clear. "You hear me clearly. First of all, Simon is my friend and a customer of my shop. He was just helping me clean the stains. Can't you think of anything clean except filth? Second," I pointed to the door, each word like an icicle, "get out of my place immediately, right now, with your disgusting possessiveness and controlling nature. Otherwise, I'll call the police right now." The last two words were like a bucket of ice water poured over Rick's head. The mad flames in his eyes gradually died down, leaving only scorched ashes and a disheveled state. He looked at Simon, whom I was shielding behind him. Then he looked at me, at my high, swollen belly, bearing his child. Then he looked at the terrified, contemptuous, and angry gazes of everyone in the store. He staggered back a step. Blood was still seeping from the cut on his hand from the metal countertop, dripping onto the flour on the floor and spreading into a glaring red. He looked like a defeated, wounded, yet still unwilling to surrender trapped beast. In the end, he said nothing. With a heavy sense of desolation and death, he turned and left in silence. The roller shutter closed, shutting out the gloomy light from outside. The shop was a mess. Overturned coffee cups, knocked over tables and chairs, and the floor was stained with cream, coffee, and specks of blood. Deathly silence. Only my heavy breathing could be heard. It's all right," Simon's deep, gentle voice rang in my ears, carrying a soothing power. "Don't be afraid, he's gone." He gently took my arm and guided me to sit down on the high stool next to me. "Is anything bothering you? Does your stomach hurt? Are you feeling anxious?" He crouched down, looking up at me as he had done countless times before, his eyes filled with pure concern and worry. The strength I had been holding back just now vanished instantly. A wave of fear and resentment washed over me. Looking into his gentle eyes, my nose tingled, and tears streamed down my face without warning. They landed on the back of his hand, which was supporting me. They were burning hot. "I'm sorry." I choked out, my words incoherent. "I've dragged you into this. I'm so sorry." "Don't talk nonsense. Simon sighed, took a clean tissue, and gently wiped away my tears. The one who should apologize is that bastard. You did a great job, Rachel. He looked into my eyes and said earnestly, you protected yourself and the baby. You were very brave. His voice was like magic, miraculously calming the storm in my heart. Regular customers gathered around, offering words of comfort. Don't be afraid, boss. We're all here. If that bastard comes back, we'll call the police for you. Yeah. What a jerk. He looks respectable, but he's a complete lunatic. Boss, sit down and rest for a while, we'll clean up. Simon, quickly check on the boss, make sure she doesn't hurt the baby. In the small shop, after the chaos, there was a warm and touching sense of human kindness that brought tears to your eyes. Simon carefully inquired about my feelings and then checked my pulse and blood pressure. It's all right, your emotions have been fluctuating quite a bit, but your vital signs are relatively stable. He breathed a sigh of relief. However, just to be on the safe side, it's best to go to the hospital tomorrow for fetal heart rate monitoring. Okay. I nodded, feeling much more at ease. Don't open for business today, tidy up and get some rest. He stood up, rolled up his sleeves, I'll help you. No need, Simon, you still have work to do. It's my day off today. He smiled, already deftly picking up a broom and beginning to sweep up the mess. His movements were methodical, gentle yet firm. Like a warm and sturdy dam, he silently and steadily kept the aftershocks of the terrible storm outside. Rick's outburst was like a boulder thrown into stagnant water. The repercussions were far from over. The next day, I had just bent over with difficulty, my belly was too big, to pull up the roller shutter door that Rick had kicked and deformed when a low-key black sedan silently slid to the side of the road. The rear window rolled down, revealing a well-maintained face, yet one edged with arrogance and severity. Rick's mother. My former mother-in-law, Lily. Her critical gaze swept over me like a searchlight, scrutinizing me from head to toe, lingering particularly long on my protruding belly. Her eyes were complex, scrutinizing and calculating, but devoid of warmth. Rachel, she began, her tone commanding with the air of someone accustomed to a superior position, get in the car, we need to talk. Lily, I have things to do at the shop, I can't leave, I said, straightening my back, neither servile nor overbearing. She frowned, clearly displeased with my refusal. It's about the child in your belly, the bloodline of the Gu family. She emphasized the word Gu family. Rick is immature, but we, as elders, cannot be foolish. This child must be recognized as a member of the family. Sure enough. I forced a smile. Lily, Rick and I are divorced. This child is mine alone. Nonsense. Her voice suddenly rose, carrying an undeniable authority. How can the blood of the Gu family be left to languish outside? With you in a place like this, what kind of image is this? She glanced at my little shop with disgust. Name your terms, she said, her tone softening slightly, with a hint of pity. As long as you give birth to the child and hand it over to the Gu family to raise, money, a house, and even a decent job will not be a problem. It will be enough to ensure you live a comfortable life for the rest of your days. The sunlight was a bit blinding. I squinted, looking at my former mother-in-law, whom I used to have to carefully fawn over, but who now held a condescending attitude, trying to buy my flesh and blood. My heart turned ice cold. It turned out that in the eyes of the Gu family, everything could be bought and sold. Including blood ties. Lily, I said calmly, my voice not loud, but clear enough to reach her ears, you may have forgotten that it was your son who forced me to sign the divorce papers for the sake of another woman. It was you who told me, with your own mouth, that a woman like me, with no background, wasn't worthy of entering the Gu family's door a second time. Now, I pointed to my stomach, just because your son's blood might be flowing inside me, do you think you have the right to arrange his life? Lily's face flushed red and then paled. You. My child, I interrupted her, each word deliberate and resolute, will only stay with his mother. His life is his own choice. We don't care for the Gu family's mountains of gold and silver. Please leave. I turned away from her, no longer looking, and forcefully pulled on the heavy roller shutter door. The metallic scraping produced a piercing sound, like a final farewell to the past. Behind me, the angry roar of a car engine echoed as it sped away, leaving me in a cloud of dust. Rick himself seemed like a different person. Or rather, a different way of doing things. He stopped showing up. Instead, he started making his presence felt in a quieter, more clumsy, and even somewhat ridiculous way. That morning, I had just opened the door when I found it piled high with things. Not the expensive, beautifully packaged luxury goods I usually see, but real, mountain-like piles of baby products. Boxes and boxes of the most expensive imported baby diapers. The store offers pure cotton baby clothes, swaddles, and socks in all sizes from newborn to 1-year-old, with tags still attached, and they feel as soft as clouds. They also carry top-quality baby formula from several brands, available for all stages. There were also brand new strollers, car seats, and even a solid wood crib. The items were so numerous they almost blocked the doorway. A printed note was pasted on top, and signed, with only one line of cold, hard text, for the child. I stood at the door, looking at this pile of expensive gifts, feeling both amused and exasperated. Finally, I dialed a number I hadn't contacted in a long time. Rick's assistant. Rachel? The assistant's voice was filled with surprise and apprehension. Please tell Rick, I said, looking at the pile of things, that he appreciates the offer, but there's just too much stuff. My shop can't hold it all, and I really don't need it all. Please ask him to send someone to haul it away. Well, Rick instructed that it must be delivered to you, the assistant said, looking troubled. Then please donate it for me, I said. To an orphanage or the neonatal ward of a maternity hospital, for children who truly need it. It'll be a good deed for Rick. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Okay. Rachel, I'll tell Rick. The items were quickly moved away. I thought that was the end of it. But the next day, I was almost 8 months pregnant, bending over in the shop to pack freshly baked pineapple buns for a regular customer. It was a bit of a struggle. Suddenly, a hand reached out from the side and steadily supported the bottom of my paper bag containing bread. I thought it was Simon or the student who was helping me. I looked up. It was Rick. He came in at some point, wearing a simple dark shirt, no tie, and the cuffs casually rolled up to his elbows. His face was expressionless, he simply helped me carry the rather heavy paper bag. His gaze, however, lingered complexly on my belly, which was more prominent from bending over. Thank you. I quickly straightened up, took the bag, and handed it to the customer, my tone as indifferent as if I were speaking to a stranger. He didn't say anything, silently withdrew his hand, and stood aside. The customer glanced at him curiously a few times, then left. The atmosphere in the shop became somewhat tense. I ignored him and turned to restock the refrigerator. Just as I squatted down, I heard a deep voice behind me, I'll do it. Before I could refuse, he was already squatting beside me, his much taller figure looming over me, carrying the familiar cool scent of cedar. He clumsily picked up boxes of mousse cakes that needed to be refrigerated, and, imitating me, carefully placed them in the cupboard according to flavor and date. His movements were stiff, even a little comical. A man who wields immense power in the business world, accustomed to issuing commands, is now squatting behind a narrow counter, meticulously arranging small boxes of desserts. The scene is both bizarre and jarring. Rick, these are small things, no need for you to bother, I couldn't help but say. It's nothing. He didn't look up, his voice muffled. After arranging the last 2 boxes, he stood up, a thin layer of sweat on his forehead. He looked at his hands, which were stained with a little cream, then at me, as if he wanted to say something. Ding dong, the doorbell rang again. Boss. Is my birthday cake ready? I'm here to pick it up. A loud voice from a regular customer called out. Yes, yes. I quickly replied, turning to get the cake from the other end of the refrigerated display case. My belly was so big that I didn't notice a small plastic basket lying on the ground as I turned around. "Watch out," Rick whispered. The instant I lost my balance, a large hand suddenly grabbed my waist, while another hand firmly supported my arm. A powerful force held me firmly in place. Still shaken, I leaned against his strong arms, my heart pounding. His arm muscles were taut, his chest rising and falling slightly with his rapid breathing. Through the thin fabric, I could feel the heat and strength in his palms. And a hint, barely perceptible, tension. "Are you all right?" he asked, looking down at me, his voice warm and close. We were too close. Close enough for me to see the new stubble on his chin and the barely concealed fear in his eyes. I pushed him away abruptly, creating some distance. "I'm fine, thank you." He froze, withdrew his hand, and his fingertips curled slightly. "Rachel." His Adam's apple bobbed, as if he wanted to explain something. "Rick, the cake is melting." I picked up the pretty birthday cake box and walked towards the older woman at the door. He left him and his unspoken words behind once again. Rick seemed determined to play the role of a silent guardian, in an extremely awkward way. He no longer tries to talk to me. He just appears like a ghost, suddenly appearing whenever I need to bend down, pick up something from a high place, or move something slightly heavy, and silently and stubbornly rushing to finish it. His movements were still clumsy, he even nearly spilled the blueberry jam I'd spent all morning making once. But he no longer approached me easily, maintaining an almost rigid distance. His gaze, however, kept drifting unconsciously to my growing belly, with a cautiousness he himself didn't even realize. That afternoon, it was pouring rain. The shop was nearly empty. Simon had surgery that day and didn't come. I sat behind the counter, my lower abdomen tightening in waves, a dull, persistent ache spreading through me. The discomforts of late pregnancy were becoming increasingly frequent. I frowned, gently rubbing my belly, wondering if I should close early and go home to rest. The roller shutter door rattled open. Rick walked in, smelling of the cold, wet rain, carrying a thermos. His hair was damp from the rain, with a few strands clinging to his forehead, making him look less stern than usual. Seeing me frown and rub my stomach, he stopped in his tracks, his eyes instantly sharpening. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice tense. "Nothing," I replied, lowering my hand, not wanting to appear weak in front of him. He placed the thermos on the counter and pushed it towards me. The lid wasn't screwed on tightly, and a wisp of warm, sweet-smelling ginger steam wafted out. "Brown sugar ginger tea," he said curtly. "Hot." I was taken aback. This wasn't like him. "No, thank you," I refused. He pursed his lips and stubbornly pushed the thermos forward again. "Drink it." The commanding tone came out again, but as if realizing something was wrong, he added stiffly, "For your own good." The lower abdominal pain returned, and I took a breath. Seeing my unpleasant expression, Rick's gaze darkened further. He suddenly turned and strode towards the control room. "What are you doing?" I asked warily. He didn't answer, but rummaged around inside and took out the mug I usually use for making tea. He opened the thermos and poured a full cup of steaming hot brown sugar ginger tea. The deep red liquid was steaming with white vapor. He carried the cup to me and placed it directly into my hand. The scalding heat of the cup warmed my palm. "Drink it." He stood beside me like a supervisor. His stubborn and awkward demeanor inexplicably reminded me of when I was a child and my grandmother forced me to drink bitter medicine when I was sick. It was a little ridiculous, and also, indescribable. Holding the warm cup, the spicy, slightly sweet liquid slid down my throat, the warmth spreading throughout my body. The bloating in my lower abdomen seemed to have eased a bit. I sipped it slowly. Rick stood 2 steps away from me, silently watching the torrential rain outside the window. His profile remained sharp and angular, but his taut jaw seemed to have relaxed slightly. The shop was quiet, save for the sound of rain and my small sips of water. "Where's the doctor?" he suddenly asked, his voice flat. "Simon?" He has surgery today, I replied casually. Oh, he responded, then fell silent. A few minutes later. Is he good to you? He asked again, his eyes still fixed on the window. I held the warm cup, watching the rain trickle down the glass. Simon is a very good person, I said. Very thoughtful and respectful. Rick's back seemed to stiffen slightly. He responded softly, his tone unreadable. Rick, I put down my cup and looked at his silent back. You don't have to do this. He turned around abruptly. Don't have to what? There's no need for all this, I said calmly. Sending things, helping out, even giving Ginger tea. It's pointless. He stared at me, his eyes like those of a wounded beast. I just wanted to do something for this child, his voice was hoarse. He is, after all, my child. I know, I interrupted him, but you can do these things in other ways. For example, pay the legally required child support on time. Or, after he is born, exercise your visitation rights within the limits permitted by law. Instead of what I am now, I paused, like a lost intruder, disrupting my life. Disrupt? He repeated the word, as if understanding its meaning for the first time, a self-deprecating smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. In your eyes, I'm just a disruptor? Otherwise? I retorted. Rick, we're already divorced. The moment you chose Monica, it was completely over between us. This child is an accident, a gift, but it's not a bond between us, much less a reason for you to make amends or cling to me. My words were like cold needles, piercing through all his clumsy, silent efforts over this period. He stood there, his tall figure appearing somewhat lonely in the dim light. Rain streamed down the glass window. He looked at me for a long time, his eyes filled with pain, struggle, and confusion, which eventually turned into a bottomless silence. I understand, he said hoarsely. Then, just as he had come, he silently turned around, pushed open the door, and walked into the vast rain. The unfinished cup of brown sugar ginger tea sat on the counter, slowly cooling down. My due date was drawing ever closer. My belly was so big it felt like I was carrying a ball, and walking was difficult. Simon was coming more often. Almost every day after get off work he would stop by to check on me and help me with whatever he could. Sometimes he'd bring me some soup his mother had made, and sometimes he'd just sit quietly for a while. How are you feeling? Is the baby moving normally? He asked as he helped me organize the coffee beans on the shelf. Yeah, the little one's quite active, always kicking me, I said, touching my belly and smiling. That's good. He smiled, his eyes warm. Is everything ready? The hospital bag? Almost, it's all packed and placed by the door, ready to be picked up anytime. That's good. He repeated, his tone reassuringly confident. Rick seemed to have truly understood. He never appeared again. Only occasionally, late at night, would I receive a text message notification of a bank deposit. The amount far exceeded the legally mandated child support. The note was always a cold, two-word expression, child support. I sent him a text message, child support payments should be made according to the law, any excess will be returned. He didn't reply. The money, however, continued to arrive on time. I was too lazy to return it, so I opened a separate account to keep it, treating it as an education fund for the child. Days slipped by in a mix of busyness and tranquility. Simple Taste gained a better reputation and even became somewhat well-known. I hired a full-time helper, a quick-witted and sweet-smiling girl named Zara. Simon helped me connect with a community midwife who would come to my home for regular checkups. Everything was in good order, steadily moving towards a new life. Until that weekend evening. Near closing time, only one table of customers remained. I was cleaning the large oven. This old morsel had been acting up lately, the temperature fluctuating wildly. When baking the last batch of cookies, I turned up the temperature a bit, thinking I'd finish quickly and be done. Just as I bent down to push the baking tray in, a lump of dough coated in grease suddenly burst into a burst of blue flame near the heating element inside the oven. Flames licked at the grease buildup on the oven walls, spreading rapidly, Thick smoke, carrying a pungent, burnt smell, billowed out from the oven door. Ah! Fire! Zara screamed. The last table of customers jumped in fright. My mind went blank. Her belly was too big, and her movements were clumsy. Her first reaction wasn't to back away, but rather to instinctively reach out and close the oven door. "Don't touch it." A hoarse shout rang out at the doorway. A figure rushed in with incredible speed. It was Rick. Like a nimble cheetah, he rushed into the control room in a few steps and yanked me away roughly. The force was so great that I staggered and almost fell, only regaining my balance thanks to his other hand firmly supporting my arm. Then, to Zara and my horror, he actually reached out and tried to pull open the scorching hot oven door, which was spewing thick smoke, with his bare hands. Sizzle! The horrifying sound of burning flesh rang out. A pungent, acrid smell of burnt protein instantly filled the air. Ugh! Rick let out a suppressed groan of pain, his face turning deathly pale, cold sweat pouring down his back. But he gritted his teeth and, with his hand that was scalded and bleeding, yanked open the oven door. Even thicker smoke and flames poured out. "Fire extinguisher," he yelled at the terrified Zara, his voice distorted by the pain. Zara then realized what was happening and scrambled to grab the fire extinguisher from the corner. Rick, with his uninjured hand, snatched the extinguisher, pulled the safety pin, aimed it at the raging flames inside the oven, and pressed down the handle. Pfft! A burst of white powder erupted violently, instantly engulfing the flames and thick smoke. The control room was filled with a white mist, causing everyone to cough. The fire was extinguished. Only the charred remains and the acrid smell persisted. A deathly silence fell. Rick leaned against the counter, panting heavily, his face as white as paper. His right hand, the one that pulled the oven door, was a bright red from his palm to his forearm, covered in large, gruesome blisters, the skin and flesh turned inside out, a truly horrific sight. The edges of the burns were still twitching slightly. Blood mixed with tissue fluid dripped from his drooping fingertips, one drop at a time, onto the ground. It was a horrifying sight. I clutched my violently heaving chest, staring at the gruesome wound, my stomach churning. Your hand." My voice trembled. He looked up, his forehead soaked with cold sweat, clinging to his temples. Those eyes, usually filled with coldness, anger, or stubbornness, were now unusually calm, even showing a hint of relief. He tugged at the corner of his mouth, as if to say something. But his gaze suddenly fell on me, his pupils contracting sharply. You're bleeding?" His voice suddenly changed, filled with unprecedented terror. I froze, looking down. A glaring, wet patch of red had appeared on the hem of my light-colored maternity dress. My water had broken. Then, a sharp, unbearable contraction suddenly struck. It felt like a red-hot iron clamp gripping my lower abdomen. Ah! I cried out in pain, my legs gave way, and I collapsed uncontrollably. "Rachel!" "Boss!" Rick and Simon, who had just rushed in, exclaimed at the same time. Simon had an early surgery today and just got here. He rushed over to support me and quickly checked me over. "Water broke." "Bloody show." "Regular contractions." "Quick! Get her to the hospital. She's going into labor." Simon's voice was calm and swift, carrying the decisiveness of a doctor. Rick's face was deathly pale, his mangled hand still dripping blood, yet he seemed completely oblivious to the pain. His other hand instinctively reached out to hug me. "Don't touch her." Simon snapped, "You have an open wound on your hand. It'll get infected." Rick's hand froze in midair. He looked at me, curled up in my arms, drenched in cold sweat from the pain, then at his own grotesque, bleeding hand. His eyes were filled with despair and helplessness. "The car. My car is outside." He roared hoarsely, turned and rushed out, his injured hand hanging limply, blood dripping down his side. Simon carefully and quickly half-carried me out. Zara frantically grabbed my hospital bag and followed. Rick had already driven to the store entrance, the car door wide open. He stood by the car, his left hand gripping the door frame tightly, his knuckles white from the force. His body trembled slightly from the pain and anxiety, while his right hand hung limply at his side, blood dripping from his fingertips onto the wet ground. He looked like a prisoner awaiting judgment. Simon carefully settled me in the back seat. "Zara, hold her. Keep her lying on her side." Simon quickly instructed, opened the passenger door and got in, then shouted to Rick, "To the Municipal Women and Children's Hospital. Quickly. Take the shortest route. Keep the speed steady." The car shot off like an arrow. Contractions came in waves, each one more intense than the last, the sharp pain threatening to overwhelm my consciousness. Sweat soaked my hair, and my vision blurred. "Breathe. Rachel. Follow my rhythm." Inhale and exhale. Simon turned around from the front seat, took my hand, and guided me with a steady and powerful voice. Zara kept wiping my sweat with a wet towel, her voice trembling with tears. "Hang in there, boss. We're almost there." I bit my lip hard, tasting the metallic flavor of blood. Through my blurred vision, I looked at the driver's seat. Rick's jaw was clenched, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Red light. He slammed on the brakes. The violent jolting made me cry out in pain. "Rick, do you even know how to drive?" Simon roared. "Shut up." Rick's voice was hoarse as he jerked the steering wheel, swerving the car into a less busy side road. "Hold on tight." He floored the accelerator, the car weaving precariously through rush-hour traffic. Each acceleration, each lane change, was accompanied by the involuntary spasms and twitches of his injured right hand. Blood had already stained most of his sleeve and the leather seat of the driver's seat. A strong stench of blood mingled with the odor of amniotic fluid filled the cramped carriage. He never looked back. Only in the rearview mirror was his deathly pale face, drenched in cold sweat, and his bloodshot eyes fixed on the road ahead. His eyes held an almost frantic focus and a resolute determination, as if he were heading not to a hospital, but to a life-or-death rescue. The car slammed on the brakes and stopped in front of the emergency room of the Municipal Women and Children's Hospital. The screeching of brakes startled the medical staff inside. Simon jumped out of the car first and shouted inside, "Emergency! The woman's water broke and she's bleeding. Frequent contractions. Quick!" Rick also staggered out of the car and used his good left hand to forcefully pull open the back door. He tried to bend down and hug me. "Get out of the way." Simon shoved him away. "Go take care of your hands." A stretcher that was already prepared was pushed over. Simon and Zara assisted the medical staff in quickly and carefully transferring me to the stretcher. I was in so much pain that my consciousness was blurred. I only felt myself being pushed and moved rapidly. In the chaos, I seemed to hear Rick's hoarse voice asking, "How is she? How is the baby?" Then came a stern voice from an unfamiliar doctor, "Sir, your hand needs immediate treatment. 3rd-degree burns. Any delay and it will have to be amputated. Get out of here." Rick roared furiously. Then Simon calmly rebuked him, "Rick. Do you want to die? Do you want her to come out after giving birth and see you with a broken hand or lying in the ICU next door? Go and treat your wound. Leave this to me." The stretcher was moving rapidly. The ceiling lights flashed before my eyes. In the midst of the excruciating pain, I seemed to hear Rick's suppressed growl, like that of a wounded beast. And the sound of his staggering footsteps being forcibly dragged away by security and doctors. Then, the delivery room doors closed tightly. The intense pain seemed endless. Consciousness teetered on the edge of lucidity and confusion. In my ears were the midwife's calm instructions, Simon's steady encouragement. He was allowed to be present during labor as a relative in an emergency, and my own incoherent cries and gasps of pain. "Push. Rachel. I can see the end. Keep going. Take a deep breath. Hold it. Push down. Great. One more time." Time lost its meaning. I don't know how much time passed. Finally. Wah! A loud, vibrant cry pierced the tension and exhaustion in the delivery room. Like a ray of light cutting through the darkness, it instantly brought tears to my eyes. I felt completely drained, as if I had been pulled out of water. The midwife gently placed a bright red, wrinkled little bundle of flesh on my chest. It was warm, soft, and carried the unique scent of new life. The little one had its eyes closed, its little mouth pursing, and it was still whimpering pitifully. My heart was instantly filled with an indescribable, burning warmth. All the pain, grievances, and struggles became insignificant at that moment. It's a beautiful little princess, weighing 6 pounds 8 ounces, and very healthy, the midwife said with a smile. Simon stood by the bed, his eyes a little red. He gently squeezed my hand, his voice tinged with laughter and a sob. "You've worked so hard, Rachel. You're amazing." I smiled wearily, lowered my head, and gently rubbed my cheek against my daughter's soft little head. My daughter. My little darling. My new world. When I was wheeled out of the delivery room and transferred to a regular ward, it was already dawn. Zara, her eyes red, rushed over. "Boss. You scared me to death." "Thank goodness. Where's my little princess? Let me see her." Simon pushed the crib, his face a mixture of exhaustion and joy. The ward was quiet. Until the nurse came in to examine me. "Rachel, there's a Rick outside, he won't leave," the nurse whispered, looking troubled. "His hand injury is very serious. Our head doctor says he needs to be hospitalized for surgery immediately, but he insists on waiting for you to come out and take a look. He's been there in the hallway since last night." I looked out through the small window in the ward door, in the direction the nurse indicated. At the end of the corridor, in the shadows near the emergency exit, Rick stood against the wall. His face was deathly pale from blood loss, and his lips were cracked. His right arm was wrapped in thick, snow-white bandages, from his palm all the way to near his elbow, secured with a splint and slinged across his chest. And 4 drip was still inserted in his left hand, the bag hanging on a makeshift stand beside him. He looked exceptionally disheveled and haggard. His eyes, however, were fixed on the direction of the ward door. Like a silent, scarred sculpture. When he saw me looking in his direction, his body stiffened abruptly, and he instinctively tried to take a step forward, but this aggravated his wounds, causing him to groan in pain and furrow his brows. Separated by a distance and glass, his eyes held an incredibly complex expression. There was longing, caution, and overwhelming weariness, and a hint of humble pleading. He was waiting. Waiting for me to allow him to see his daughter. Simon saw him too, his brow furrowed slightly, and he looked down at me. "Should we let him in?" I looked at my daughter sleeping soundly in the crib. Her rosy little face was so small and soft. Then I glanced at the gaunt, stubbornly waiting man outside the door. He had just used his almost ruined hand to save my child and me from the fire. After a few seconds of silence, I said to the nurse, "Please tell him to thank him for his help last night. His hand needs treatment, so please ask him to go back to his room." The nurse nodded and left. I gestured to Simon to push the crib closer to the door and adjust its angle so that people outside could vaguely see the tiny swaddled baby inside. Rick's gaze was instantly drawn to the small figure, as if by a magnet. Through the glass, I couldn't see his expression clearly. I only saw that he seemed frozen in place. Then, his shoulders began to tremble uncontrollably and violently. He raised his uninjured left hand and covered his mouth tightly. His tall body slid slowly, very slowly, down the cold wall. Curled up in the shadows at the end of the corridor. Like a beast utterly defeated, weeping silently. On the day of her daughter's 1-month celebration, Jianwei reopened after renovations. The store had doubled in size, bright and cozy. 2 new helpers were hired, and Zara was promoted to store manager, full of enthusiasm. Simon held his daughter, who was wrapped in a pink blanket. The little one stared at the colorful balloons floating in the store with her big, bright eyes. "Our little princess is 1 month old today, shouldn't she smile for her uncles and aunts?" Simon lowered his head and gently rubbed his nose against his daughter's little face. The little one grinned, her toothless mouth agape, and made an ah sound, as if in response. The shop's regulars were completely charmed and gathered around to pet it. "Oh my, so cute! Just like her mother. Those little eyes, they look so clever. The owner is so lucky." The shop was filled with laughter and joy. I was busy greeting guests and sharing the newly developed limited edition full moon cakes with everyone. The air was filled with the sweet aroma of cakes, the rich flavor of coffee, and the warm, milky scent unique to baby dolls. It was a lively and fulfilling time. The shop door opened. The wind chimes tinkled. Rick walked in. He was wearing a simple dark coat, his right arm still in a brace, hidden in his sleeve. He was thinner, his features appearing even more hardened. He was carrying a large, exquisitely wrapped gift box. Her gaze immediately locked onto Simon's daughter in his arms. Her eyes softened instantly, even carrying a hint of timid longing. The shop quieted down considerably. Regular customers all recognized this ex-husband and rescue hero, their expressions varying. Rick seemed a little uneasy. He walked to the counter and gently placed the large gift box down. "For the child," he said in a low voice. "Thank you," I nodded and accepted it. It was a top-of-the-line baby car seat. He hesitated, then his gaze returned to my daughter. Simon glanced at me. I nodded. Simon, holding his daughter, took 2 steps forward and stopped at a suitable distance, enough for Rick to see clearly, but not too close. The little guy seemed to sense something, his big, dark eyes turning towards Rick, curiously examining the unfamiliar, wounded man. Rick's body tensed instantly. He was struck by a huge surprise, yet also filled with unbelievable fear. He gazed intently, almost greedily, at his daughter's small face, his eyes unblinking. His Adam's apple bobbed violently. He reached out, but his hand, braced, remained frozen at his side. In the end, he simply used his good left hand to pull a thick, bulging red envelope from his pocket. On the red paper were 2 powerful, bold characters written in calligraphy, "Allie." He awkwardly, almost reverently, gently placed the red envelope on the counter and pushed it toward me. "The name?" "I chose it," he said in a hoarse voice. "Allie. Allie." I murmured it to myself. "Thank you, it's a good name," I said. Rick seemed greatly affirmed, his tense shoulders relaxing slightly. He took another deep look at his daughter. The little one seemed sleepy, yawned slightly, and snuggled closer to Simon. Rick's eyes dimmed. He looked at me one last time, his gaze devoid of its usual stubbornness, anger, or arrogance. Only a heavy, weary, almost desperate calm remained. "I'm leaving," he said. Then, he turned away. His figure remained tall, yet it exuded an inescapable sense of desolation and loneliness. Like a lone wolf that had finally realized it could never be tamed and could only return to the wild. He pushed open the door and walked into the bustling crowd outside. He never looked back. The store's lively atmosphere returned. Simon walked over carrying Allie and gently touched my arm. "Are you all right?" I shook my head, looking at the thick red envelope on the counter and the red paper with the words Allie written on it. I picked it up and opened the red envelope. Inside was a bank card and a folded note. The note was written in Rick's cold but neat handwriting. Password, Allie's birthday. Child support and education fund. Non-refundable. I carefully put the bank card and note away. I looked up and saw Simon's gentle, questioning gaze. I smiled and pointed to our daughter, who was already asleep in his arms. "Look, our Allie, sleeping so soundly." Sunlight streamed warmly through the bright glass windows, falling on rows of freshly baked breads that exuded an enticing sweet aroma. The cashier's display screen showed today's date and a line of small print, "Today's best recipe, a new life."